Hello guys, my name is Theo Goff, host of the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. Today's episode is more about what is dyslexia and diving into it and maybe adding a bit more detail so it's a bit more valuable for you. Guys, I really hope you enjoy today's episode, and if you could leave a comment or you may send me a message about other things you would like me to do episodes on, or different things out there that you'd feel more, is really valuable to talk about, or just how this podcast has helped you and impacted your life. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy today's episode. So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. Hello guys, today we'll be answering the question, what is dyslexia? What actually is it? Now, I know before I have attempted to answer this question before many times, and I feel it's really important to look over and really ask ourselves, what is our dyslexia? And now we can come to this in a few different ways and tackle this question in a few different ways. But I remember being a kid, this is my education growing up of what dyslexia was. Because I got diagnosed fairly early on. It was I was having a lot of challenges at school, and I think I had 2 years of doing tests. My school basically put me on 2 years of doing tests before they found out, I was dyslexic. And the school didn't diagnose me with dyslexia. Basically my mum had to take me out and put me on tests to find out I was dyslexic. And they found out I was dyslexic. I was like, oh, okay. I have this thing called dyslexia. I have no idea what it was. And I remember this person who diagnosed me, Valerie Mucha, she diagnosed me. And I remember afterwards she got close to me, and we were sitting on these little baby chairs. I remember they're different colours, like pink and blue. I was on a blue one. And she went to me and she kneeled down next to me and she said to me, Theo, you have dyslexia. And she said, dyslexia is amazing. You know, the smartest people on the earth are dyslexic. Albert Einstein is dyslexic, and he's one of the smartest humans you've ever lived. And then my mum says there was a grin from ear to ear for me when I realised, oh my God, I got this special thing called dyslexia. And I remember after that, I was I got this new thing about me, dyslexia, wow. Because I was a kid, I didn't really know what it meant. And my parents, they were so relieved because they've been battling with me for years and years. I was very, very low in school. It was so obvious. You know what I mean? I had loads of tantrums, getting in loads of fights, having all these problems. Because basically I was scared of the future. Because I was scared of things happening. I was scared of not knowing why I have these difficulties. And I remember my mum had this tenant of this, basically she's landlord of this house. And he went there one time to do something with the tenant. I can't remember how. But basically she was introducing her kids. And I was like, okay, I'm going to introduce myself. I was like, hi, my name's Theo and I'm dyslexic. And that's how I pursued it. It's a unique thing about me. I want to tell everyone. And then as time had gone on, I eventually managed to get into a dyslexic school. Very lucky to get in because I was so severe. Crazy to think about it, but that's what it was at the time. Anyway, when I got into the dyslexic school, there was a lot of dyslexic teachers there who, I found that very, very supportive. Growing up, to have dyslexics around you, teaching you, because they know what it's like. And a lot of people explain dyslexia in different ways, they explain things like mixed hemispherical dominance, which is basically how they explained it, sometimes your right brain and left brain gets mixed up, which was wrong. A lot of times they explained it it's dyslexia is just when you see things in pictures. Or dyslexia is when you have such a big imagination. Or dyslexia is when you just work on your right side of your brain a lot more. and they explain things basically, okay, dyslexia is how you got much better imagination and you can see things very, very much picture, but you find things hard, you just learn different. And that is how, like, I got told what dyslexia is. And I remember late on in life, being like 18 and feel like, okay, I want to find out what dyslexia is for myself, and going out there and doing a lot of research, you mean studying loads. And that study hasn't stopped at all. I mean, read loads of books, done loads of stuff, had loads of breakthroughs, understood myself so much more better. But here's what I want to say before I jump into the question, what is dyslexia? Because I'm writing a book, as I sometimes mention, and the first part of it is explaining dyslexia as what is dyslexia. It's like loads of books are like whole purpose is to explain what dyslexia is. I want to explain it in the full context, and not just what. Loads of people try to explain what dyslexia is in the mind, what it is in the mind, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to explain what dyslexia is holistically, because dyslexia doesn't just affect my mind; it affects everything. Because it affects my mind, which makes me be able to do things hard, find things hard, like reading, writing, memorizing. Make certain things harder, and also certain things easier. But because it makes certain things harder, it would affect my self-esteem. It would affect the way I do things. It would affect how I operate in the world. And then because it affects these things, how do I operate in the world? It's like there's these after effects. It's like a butterfly effect. One thing affects another thing, affects another thing, affects another thing, affects another thing. And I want to explain it fully holistically and with a way saying, okay, here's what it is. And also saying, look, there are different avenues to take down, and here's how people have different experiences of their dyslexia. And so that's really, really critical to me. I like to see dyslexia, there's two different realms of explaining it, or two different things you have to really get into. Is one, the neuroscience of dyslexia is understanding how it affects you in your brain. And that gets into, okay, if we had to go from a very basic standpoint and then get a little more complex, is saying, okay, dyslexia, you're thinking pictures. You're a lot more right brain dominated. You see everything in pictures, and I like to think of it as like everything's 3D. Everything's 3D. When you look at things 3D from a whole perspective. You can see images, you can rotate images around inside your head. But when you look at 2D images, like words, like facts, like figures, it's really, really hard. I like to think of like it as like, okay, 2D images, things like facts, figures, numbers, and analytical. That's more like think of it, okay, people autistic, they're very bad at social skills, but very good at facts, figures, numbers. Dyslexics are the opposite. Can be very good at social skills if you don't have negative beliefs and things like that. And we can be very good at seeing things in a whole picture. We're very good at that type of stuff. Very bad at the linear, small stuff. So that's how I think of it as a very basic analogy. But then when you look at a step closer, you look at, okay, it's dyslexia brain reading compared to a non-dyslexic brain reading. And you notice how there's different areas. There's like we typically activate areas on our front of our brain. That's associated with reading. It's associated with breaking down words. But then what they found with non-dyslexics, when they read, they activated areas in the front of their brain, but as well a lot more areas in the back of their brain, and the part of the brain called the occipital. And when they access this part is the word recognition. We can look at a word, see it, and read it really fast. Dyslexics don't really activate that when reading. Therefore, over time, we train the front part of our brain for a reading task that like breaks down the word and goes cut at a cat. Breaks down the word in sound like letters, sounding out. And then non-dyslexics, they can look at a word and see the image of the word and sound it out, because that's more the automation part of the brain. And a lot of these skills, and that's why it can be like 5 times more harder for dyslexic to break down the phonology of the word, the phonemes of a word. A lot more harder for them to break it down than a non-dyslexic. And because over time, what more we use of our brain, the stronger it gets. The more we use the front part of our brain, the bigger that part of our brain gets. And we still struggle to read because we're still using about 5 times more energy reading than someone who, using the back part of the brain, can look at a word and read it like that. And so that's the dyslexic brain of reading, and there's differences between the white matter and grey matter of the brain. Basically, those are things like the amount of the muscle cells in the actual brain, the fibers, and the connective tissue. You mean things like connecting is like passing information from one part to another, or getting information. That's the white ones, and the brown ones or the dark ones. That's basically the cells, the size of it. And there's slightly differences in there, and then you can get even like a lot more complex when you talk about the magnonuclear deficit, phonological deficit, and cerebellar deficit, and all these other things, and they causation, and it can get complex. But here's what's really important about it, is that you don't have to understand the stuff in the brain. You have to understand how it affects you. Because the only thing that matters is understanding how it defines you. So what is your dyslexia? Answering the question, what is your dyslexia, is so much more valuable than answering the question, what is dyslexia, in a sense. When you answer the question, what is your dyslexia, you are answering it whether or not, how it affects you. You personally, when you're answering the question, what is dyslexia, you take a step back. This is not me. This is the science, this is the evidence. But when you take a step forward, okay, how it affects me personally. And once you figure out, okay, the how it affects you, what strengths does it give you and what weaknesses does it give you, then you can start to move forward. And then you can move forward into, understanding how it affects your life, you mean emotionally, your beliefs, your values. Here's something that's very, very, very valuable. Something that I created. It's called the dyslexia blueprint. And here's how you can start to distinguish between what's a neurological difference that dyslexia gives you and what's a kind of like outer world that dyslexia gives you. I'm thinking of the inner world, or it's like the beliefs, the values, how you feel about yourself. Because I think of it like this. When someone's born with dyslexia, they have this brain that's different. You mean you can't change that, but yet they don't believe that, but yet they don't have any negative beliefs about themselves. And because they have these negative beliefs about themselves, that affects their actions, that affects this, that affects that. So the one thing I want us to get from this, and to take value from this podcast episode, is realizing this, is that understanding what dyslexia is very valuable. But what's more valuable is understanding what your dyslexia is and the impact that your dyslexia is having on your life. What you mean, maybe some beliefs that made you have, maybe some feelings, maybe some things that may have you fear of, or some things you find hard. And once you can start identifying how it affects you, and then you can start really working on the process of, okay, how can we overcome these challenges? What are the challenges? Why do we have these challenges? And a lot of times we can feel like focus on things like reading, writing, embarrassed, stutter, can't do certain things. And we focus on those. And that actually causes us to have negative beliefs. But once we can really work on our beliefs, work on our triggers, and start to heal those, then we can go back to our problems like reading, writing, and all these other problems that we have, and start to really work on those in a lot more way that's a lot more productive, rather than always try to work on them and always hitting a brick wall of belief of saying, well, we can't do that. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll see you all again soon. Bye. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Now, I got something really exciting I want to share with you. Over the last 5 years, I've been absolutely obsessed with learning everything I can about dyslexia and how they can overcome their challenges and maximize their strengths. And I've been spending many hours on many days scouring the internet to find solutions to the problems. And I found many solutions. So over quarantine, I was thinking, what if I scour the internet again. What if I go through every last resource that I've been through before and take everything that's useful and put it into one place? And that's how I filled up a lot of my time in quarantine. I scoured the internet and found all the most inspirational, all the most informational, all the most useful videos about dyslexia out there and put them all into one place, so you don't have to waste time scouring the internet to find solutions to your problems, so you know there's only one place to go. And this thing I created is called the Dyslexia Black Book. You can get it at conqueringdyslexia.net/black book. Now, I'm wanting to offer this to you and present this to you completely for free because I want to save you time. I want to save you time, so scouring the internet and not finding the answers like I've done. If you go to conqueringdyslexia.net/black book, Conquering Dyslexia Black Book, you'll find it. Or guys, you can just click the link in this episode description to find it. But yeah, guys, that's the special message I wanted to share with you today.